Hello, my name is Michael Humphrey. I'm an assistant professor of journalism and media communication at Colorado State University. I'm interested specifically in when we talk about diversifying persona studies, the role that Hannah Arendt has played in our thinking about it and re-looking at some of the issues around her theories around public and private sphere and how that deals with life storytelling, but also what it's leaving out. The name of my emerging paper right now is called Reexamining Arendt's Concept of Oikos, or the Household, through the lens of a YouTube vlog. And the vlog I'm looking at used to be called Knive Knolls until 2017, when it was a family vlog, and the couple, which was a mixed race couple, got divorced in 2017, and the vlog became Brit Space, which really became a vlog about a single mother of three, a Black woman navigating both the online and offline world under these new persona that weren't necessarily key to either the vlog or her life before the divorce. And so what happens in that shift of digital persona after divorce, I thought was an interesting comparison to bring into something like persona studies. Also, YouTube vlogs are interesting because they really represent that collapse between a private and public self, especially family vlogs, and actually commodify the oikos, or the household, into entertainment, and the sort of interaction between audiences and creators that I think really represents to some degree Arendt's concept around modernity, this collapse of public and private, which I'll talk about here in a moment. Arendt is a really important part of the persona studies at its inception as we think about it today. And Marshall and Barber talk about it specifically in their 2015 paper, where they talk about Arendt seeing the need to have clear separation between public and private identities, and that persona is sort of the negotiation between that privacy and public. And looking at that public-private sphere, especially as Arendt constructs it in The Human Condition, it's two things. And the first thing I want to talk about is a physical space, the private space, that she refers to often as oikos, or household specifically, and how that's different from the polis, or the political realm, that public realm, and talks about in ancient times, from the Greek state, at least the Greek states, city-states onward, that there was this clear division between the two, and that in modern times, what has emerged is a social realm, which is a collapse between the private and the public, and creates a lot of different demands for what's important in a society. Those things that used to be shared become personal. So she argues that what we once cared about, a shared reality and a shared identity, and that has become largely personal now, that the economy has taken over as the more important goal, as opposed to world building together and creating public spaces of equality. But it also has an identity element to it, as Marshall and Barber point out. And so where Arendt comes from here is that each individual existent has an identity that's unchangeable, something that's unique about them, and that is disclosed in action and speech during the life of the existent, and is actually has to come out into public because it has to be perceived in public space, which becomes the story of a life. It's a very unique look at the way a life story emerges, and is very important both in offline and online worlds. That what we have, that essence that we carry around with us, is not tangible or meaningful until it is presented in public space. And so that sets up a really important kind of tension about the persona, that negotiation between the essence, or that interiority of our life, with a public space that sort of puts pressures of definition on it, and also accepts it into a public realm to help create a sense of a broader world. The problem with the idea that we need to consider in persona studies is something that really gets addressed in a couple of different ways in the paper I'm working on. One is at the concept itself. Arendt talks a lot about who gets to be in public and who's in private, and admits that there is a deep inequality at the heart of it, but also brings it into modern times and looks at that inequality as well, but not in ways that really makes us look at the world especially through the lens of race and the way we live it today, especially in Western cultures. And this is where Gaines can be extremely helpful. She wrote a book about Hannah Arendt and quote unquote the Negro Question, in which she looks at both the philosophy and the way Arendt applies it a couple of times in sort of public discourse, especially around the issue of integrating schools in the 50s, in which Arendt wrote a couple of very controversial arguments. And Gaines argues that as long as freedom, action, speech, and political influence remain in the hands of those liberated from the necessities of life, that part right there, by the way, is really important to the question of household, because what Arendt says is that the household is sort of focused on survival. And then she calls that labor, making sure that we have the basic needs in our life, and that people who are freed up from those basic needs go into the public sphere and start to develop a polis, or a gathered space of shared meaning. But of course, not everybody got that opportunity. And that's one of the questions that Gaines is really looking at very carefully in Arendt's concept, but also the way, as I said, she applies it. Because as she continues, by exercising the domination over others, which is very clear in both Greek life and modern life, the persons dominated and subjected by others will not be free in the way that Arendt intends. And I think that's the really important question to look at here is who is Arendt talking about when she talks about the public space? Who is allowed to be in that public space? And I think that question was a lot less subtle in Greek times. It was mainly men who were free. So looking at that question leads to looking at the three major questions I have going into the paper, which is, in what ways are certain persona allowed to thrive while others fester in harsher judgment? That's a really critical question around equality, especially in digital spaces. When the labor of a private life becomes a public artifact, so that collapse happens, what pressures are placed on the persona that reveal cultural inequalities and inequities? And I think that's the kind of thing that the subject I'm looking at, the vlog, can really help tease out. And then what revisions to Arendt's public-private duality could allow for greater equality in persona construction across Western culture? And because persona studies has not only crossed disciplines, but borders so nicely so far, I think that's a really important question for those of us in the West to consider. Which brings us back to Britt. What is the freedom of her persona? What can she provide her audiences that don't get the harsh criticisms, that don't make people walk away? And that's a really important question for an influencer like Britt, who makes a living off of developing persona that people relate to. And so over these past 4 years of her life transition, I'll be looking at those videos and that data, both what she says and what she shows about her life and her family's life, the household, as well as venturing out into public life as a single Black mother of 3, and as well as the commenters and what they're saying, and how those commenters change over time so that persona emerge on both sides, and help us understand, what is actually free, what is being suppressed and oppressed, in our age today, and what can that teach us about how we can diversify persona studies going forward. Thank you very much.